on a role, no matter how much it's paid. I mean, I would do an acting gig for free, actually, because to me the exposure is more important. So, to an extent, they are exploiting us because they are using what we should be using for our own good. As a result, South African directors are being marginalized to a certain extent. I know that directors like Gavin Hood have been to America, have been to Berkeley University, have studied under Spielberg, and they've done international productions. And they've been in international productions like Stargate and things. So there is that exposure, but, you know, like I said, internationally it's growing. We are getting more exposure. I know that Jean-Claude Van Damme is in the country at the moment, doing his latest production, which he's directing and producing, shooting it in Cape Town, with an FHM model, I forget her name, as the lead support. And we have that, but we don't have the exchange intra-Africa. And that needs to grow, I suppose. Mm.
I'm sure my viewers would like to know how you combine all this with your teaching career. What are your challenges?
Well, the first challenge is the time constraint. I have to be at school at 8 in the morning until 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then there's the meetings, and then there's all the academic stuff that goes with that. Together with that, I have to also train. The wrestling doesn't just happen on its own. A lot of training goes on behind that as well. You know, like I said, you see a book, you see a movie, but what goes on behind that is tremendous. I mean, the hours at the gym, the hours in the ring, working with your training partner, with your coach. It's a lot of hard work. And it's very draining. And very often I have to actually leave one thing out to do another thing. Like, I have to skip karate on this day because I'm just too fatigued. I have to go for that wrestling meeting or that wrestling practice and leave out this production meeting that I plan to have today. And I have to juggle and swap and turn, never mind my studies and things like that. So every hour of my day is very, should I say, booked, fully booked. So, you know, my social life suffers as a result, my family life suffers as a result, and everything is just centered around my hobbies. I'm loving it. I enjoy every second of it, and I wouldn't change it for the world. But it does mean that I've got to put the brakes on other things. So, as a result, I can't give off my best, to be honest, as a wrestler in the ring. I feel I can't give off my best as an actor. I can't give off my best as a teacher. As a doctoral student, I can't give off my best writing up my research report. So I feel scatterbrained, and I'd like to cut down on a few things and focus on others, firstly. But there's the upside as well, because as a teacher, when I'm teaching, I've got this vast range of experience to draw upon. And my students actually love it. They actually can't believe it. They feel a little bit overwhelmed, because whenever I'm teaching visual literacy, I have to spend the whole lesson talking about pre-production, storyboarding, script writing, and about what goes into it. And they actually love it. And I'm not a novelist, but I have written academically before. I know what goes into writing. So, you know, as an English teacher, when I teach, or when I talk about converting a novel into a film, which, as you know, happens all the time, Athol Fugard, Charles Dickens books, all made into movies. Talking about the disparity between the two, why watching the film. You know, kids are lazy. They want to watch the movie and leave out the book. And I can share what a movie is and why the movie is not the same as the book. And there's always bringing that into it. Extramurally as well, I'm in charge of oratory at my school, and I teach the drama. So I have first-hand experience in that regard. So, you know, I bring it to them firsthand, and they grow and they develop as a result. Many of them are inspired to become movie makers and actors as well, I think, as a result of that. So there's a lot of talent out there, and I'm glad to actually bring it to them. The reason I chose to do the teaching initially, despite everything, is as a teacher, you can incorporate everything you know into your lesson. As an English teacher, especially, because there's room for, as a math teacher, you know, you have to teach the syllabus. As an English teacher, there's room for interpretation. You can bring your acting experience into it, doing visual literacy. You can bring your writing experience into it, teaching a novel. I can bring my wrestling into it in various ways as well, because TV programs are also part of visual literacy, and what goes into that is also important in understanding what goes into a movie. Wrestling is a very funny sport because everybody wants to know, is it real? Is it real? I mean, do they really do that? Is there a script? And I've got first-hand experience there, so I can share that as well. And they're very fascinated by what goes into it. And the answer is, well, a bit of it is scripted, and a bit of it is not, because I know you want to ask that. And It's sort of in between. It's semi-scripted and it's semi-impromptu. And professional wrestling is not like amateur wrestling in that it's meant to be a show for entertainment. It's not meant to be a fight where you beat up somebody. And that's why it's so popular, and that's why I love it. So sharing all these inside secrets with my kids is interesting because they love it and they feel like they've got a spy. What happens behind the scenes? What happened here? What do wrestlers do? And you know, it's nice. I really enjoy it, and my kids enjoy it as well because they are privy to something which, you know, other kids are not.
On a final note, what are your thoughts on African unity, seeing that you're not a politician, as an African, as an ordinary person in Africa? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are that there's room for a lot of development because many people in this country are suffering from an identity crisis. I mean, you have a white European person whose grandparents are from England and other grandparents are from Scotland, but they're living in Africa. So what are they? How do they fit in? I am an South African Indian. I am African to the core. I've been here all my life. South African schools. I'm a monolingual English speaker. I don't speak any of my ancestors' languages, but I'm also Hindu. My parents are, they feel more Indian than they do South African because they were brought up in the apartheid era. I, on the other hand, feel more South African. And I would not want to go to India. I would feel very out of place there. So I also have that identity crisis. Many people in this country are from Nigeria, from the Congo, from Zimbabwe. Many of my students, I have a Zimbabwean student who speaks like a Zimbabwean, but doesn't like his country for obvious reasons because of the political turmoil there. And he feels very at home here. He loves the place, but he gets picked on by his friends for being from Zimbabwe. And everybody, besides the indigenous African people, have an identity crisis happening. So I think we need to overcome that. We need to not look at ourselves as outsiders, and we need to integrate into this wonderful democracy that we have. Nelson Mandela always said that. He said that we have this, yes, and it's a relic of the past which we need to work against. We need to stop feeling, okay, no, actually I'm Indian. I am not African. I'm not South African. I am Indian. I'm not Indian in that regard. That's more of an ancestral thing. So we need to actually get over that. With the movie industry, we're obviously doing a lot to overcome that. The SABC has a brief out now that they'll fund any project that tells of South African history. And if you just go to them with a brief and with a script and a storyboard and a project, they'll more than likely fund it. So, you know, a lot is being done in the industry. You watch movies like Broken Promises. It's an Indian movie. Run for Your Life is an Indian movie, but it's a South African Indian movie. Take that to India and people wouldn't get the humor. People wouldn't enjoy it. And that's why it's so popular, because it's something that's uniquely South African, but Indian South African. So it's a sub-market. And I love that. If you watch this animation I was talking about, all sorts of characters are in it. There's a Cape-colored guy, there's an African man, there's a Durbanite Indian. And again, that's symbolic of unity. And I think that the movie industry, more than anything, does a lot to bring that together. Obviously, as a teacher as well, it's very nice to see that black students and white students are integrating a lot more. They don't see themselves as separate. Racism is not such a big issue anymore. I read a story by Herman Charles Bosman to my students, which makes use of the word kafir a lot. And it's said at least 16 times. It's just saying these kafirs, that kafirs. And it's meant to grate the reader. It's meant to disconcert the reader. And I've noticed that the students weren't much perturbed by it. It wasn't grammatical. Weren't very perturbed by it. They weren't very disturbed by it. They weren't as disturbed as students would have been 5 years ago. And it's wonderful to see. When I hear the word coolie, I don't get as offended as I would have gotten 5 years ago. So there is change, positive change in that direction. And I think that in 10 years' time, South Africa will be a very different place, a lot more cosmopolitan. People will stop being so parochial, so restricted, so boxed in, and there'll be a lot more integration. So I'm very optimistic about the future. And I think that the movie industry is growing, Teaching is growing, academia is growing, business is growing with BEE. I think it's working fine, but there are challenges as well which could be tackled in a different way. The strike that just happened was also an upshot of that. I have a lot to say on that, but that's a separate matter altogether. And so there are challenges, but this country is growing in leaps and bounds, and I think unity is en route. South African unity. African unity is another challenge altogether, because if you look at, for example, South Africa and Zimbabwe, they are worlds apart. Zimbabwe here, Africa, South Africa here. And what's going to happen? Are we going to go there? Is Zimbabwe going to come up here? Are we going to meet halfway? But we need to synchronize everything within Africa. And once we do that, we can dominate the world, really.
Suren, I want to say a big thank you for coming on the show. It's been a very interesting time with you, and thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It was
welcome.
Great.
So viewers, that's it with Suren. I hope you had a nice time like we had here, and we hope to see you on the segment again some other time. Thank you. Goodbye.
Wow, he's also a teacher. That's very interesting. Man of many talents, you might add.
I do agree.
Well, we wish him all the best in his career.
On Fashion Corner today, we bring you the two Vugani finalists at the Durban Fashion Week, Linda Siwe and Musa.
These two ladies came out with stunning designs and really did the name proud.
Africa, my name is Thandega. We're here at the MTN Durban Fashion Week, and with me here is Musa, the winner of the Vugani Fashion Show Awards. Hi Musa, how are you?
Hi, how are you?
How does it feel to be here?
It's very, the adrenaline is rushing,
Yeah.
you know, it's booming with a lot of talent.
Yeah.
It's very nice.
Yeah, do you feel like there's lots of competition?
Yeah, obviously the competition
Yeah.
is always there. I mean, they've chosen the best
Yeah.
in South Africa to showcase here, so there is definitely competition, but it only makes one stronger.
All right,
You know.
and can you tell me your designs? Is it it's the same collection that's coming up on the stage again as from the Vugani?
Yes, yes,
Alright.
a little altered,
Okay.
a little extra accessories also
Alright.
added, but it's basically the same range that I showcased at the Old Mutual.
And I'm seeing that like all the designs that have been there so far are not that African. Like, what can you say about the African designs? Do you think that we should have more African designs? As I mean, we are Africans here.
Yeah, well, you know, I think the African element should subconsciously
Yeah.
show in your designs, because we are Africans at the end of the day, and you can expect to see that tomorrow.
All right. So what can we expect from you tonight?
You can expect a lot of